Hi everyone, this is Tanya from Flying Dog Studio. Thank you so much for joining me for part 4, the final part in my C.M. Barker Little Fairy study. We are using the Winsor & Newton watercolor pencils, and just a reminder, we have used the floral tones, the skin tones, and then I also had to pull out the landscape tones for some things. So in this particular video though, we are putting on the finishing touches. So we'll probably be using quite a few of these pencils on here, but just to get the detail and the skin. So I'm going to slow the video down as you just saw when I hold up a pencil so you can see what I'm using in case you want to follow along. And also if you want to follow along, I have the links down below where you can find this reference photo along with all the supplies that I'm using. So we're doing things a little bit differently than if I were doing actual colored pencil, which I've mentioned this in other videos, and you can catch 1 through 3. Again, I have those listed down below. So I'm doing it a little bit differently than if I were using regular colored pencils. I'm coming on and I already have like a base coat on here, but I'm coming back with the same colors and I'm adding a little more color to the piece. And I'm starting with the lighter ones and then I'll work to the darker ones. If I were using regular colored pencil, I always start with the dark and then I go to the light, because as we get lighter with the pencils, we start burnishing or getting that waxy buildup. We don't want to do that with this. We want it to be able to turn into watercolor on here. So I'm starting with the lighter colors and I'm working to the dark. And again, I'm still doing the technique where I put some on and then I let it dry and then I come back, because it's always easier to add more on than to take off what you've done and make a mistake. Well, hang on, because things are going to get a little bit tricky as we get toward the end of the video with that technique. And I really need your input on this. So if you just hang on, and I would tell you what minute it's going to be at, but I don't remember, but it's coming up and I'm working on the face, and it has to do with this exact technique of continuing to put on layers a little bit at a time. So yeah, there's going to be a problem. I'm not even going to try to work it out. I can't. I don't know how to work it out. So if you know how to work it out, keep watching. I'll let you know when we get there. I also want to tell you in this video, as you know, if you watch my stuff, I work in front of a window and you can start to see it on here, a little bit of flicker in the upper left-hand corner. So if you're someone that flashing lights bothers you, stop the video right now and don't go forward with it. Or reach up at the top and hit that little settings button and slow the video down, because it's not so bad if you're going a little bit slower with the video. Since I'm in front of the window, it was a windy day, it was a sunny day, but we had clouds, and it was crazy the kind of clouds that we have because of the filming of this. It is the beginning of November. Right now we're towards the middle, heading toward the end of November, but it was toward the beginning of November, and most generally we don't have a lot of sunny days. We have kind of overcast gray days, but this was a sunny day. The wind was blowing as if it were March, and the clouds were just like those Pixar clouds going by, and beautiful, but terrible if you're doing art, and I didn't realize. So it's going to be bright and dark, bright and dark, bright and dark, especially when you get a little bit farther to the end. It's kind of in the middle toward the end. It really does that. So just a fair warning, if that bothers you, please note, I don't know exactly what kind of light bothers people, that might give them a seizure. I know some people are a little susceptible to that, but just wanted to let you know. So that being said, we're going to continue on here. And as you can see, I have already added my first layer of color, and I wanted to zoom in so you could see what my paintbrush is doing, because that will be very important later on. And you can't see it every time, but I'm wiping my brush off and rinsing it fairly often because I don't want to drag all of the colors around. If I'm going to some of the same colors on the face, or I want to blend something out as I just did on the chin, or what I'm going to do on the cheeks here, then, I need the clean water. So I will hit that clean water and come back in. And this little area is what's going to give me trouble, right under the jawline there going down into the neck. But I'm gonna be quiet for just a little bit and let you watch me work, and then I'll hop back on in just a second and we'll talk some more. Just a reminder, as I'm building more color up on the face, while you just saw me put the water on and activate all of that colored pencil, the paper has dried. I haven't gone right on top of wet paper. I have a hairdryer that I keep right underneath my desk, and when it's time to use it, I pull it out, plug it in, and I force things to dry. Sometimes I'll let them dry by themselves, but I was ready to go ahead and finish this up. I had a good sunny day, or so I thought, to do this painting and wanted to finish up, so I forced it to dry. Some people will tell you if you let paper dry on its own, you get a different effect than if you force it to dry with like hair dryer. I don't know if that's true. I do it because it saves time. So if you'll want to save time, just, use a hair dryer. That works. But I want to hop on and tell you that. Please make certain that your paper is dry before you come back on with the pencil. I start activating this particular layer with a size 3 round from that Winsor & Newton because I'm thinking small areas, want to get into tight spaces. It was not holding enough water for me. I realized I was starting to have to use a little more water to get these colors activated and move them around where I wanted them. And I'm not using a terrible amount of water in my brush, but that size 3 just wasn't doing it. So I had to opt for the size 6. Now I've done the face, the neck is dry, it's not wet, but I realized that I didn't put the color under there. So do you see how hard I'm bearing down? I'm bearing down too hard. I do believe I'm bearing down too hard. And I'm coming back, and again, I'm using a little bit of water and going back, but I'm having to use more than I did before. And it's going to start right down in that neck. Watch what happens, because it happened in the previous section of this where I did the neck right before this when I, dried it, and then I came out and started adding color. When I put the water on that neck, I had to come back and smooth it out. It kind of wanted to bubble on me. So I'm hesitating here, but I'm coming in. Do you see how it is kind of splotchy? it's not exactly what I want, and I want that to smooth out like the rest of the face. And look at that. Everything I just put down has disappeared, and we're going to see it again. I'm still wanting to kind of smooth that out, so I come back to it again, and maybe I've just overworked the area again. If you have experience with these, let me know. When I was teaching, I did not teach with the watercolor pencils. We had one set for like, I think I had 60 kids that were in the junior, senior high area where we were learning to use color, and it was just easier to use regular watercolor. So I don't have a lot of experience. I used either colored pencils or I used watercolor, but I never used watercolor pencils. So I don't know. Let me know what I'm doing wrong if you know. But it gets worse before it gets better, and it actually ends up looking just like it did at the very beginning. So I'm coming back with some lighter colors, and I'm wanting to blend out some of these rougher edges on, and that was umber in case you didn't see it there. Some of these rougher edges, and I'm coming back to that neck. I really want to get that darker. So I'm putting the lighter color on top, that pastel pink, which is what I started with, I believe, when I started just like the base layer. And I'm wanting to put that on top to kind of smooth some stuff out. And yes, if in case you haven't noticed, I've totally ignored the ear. I don't know why. I realize it in a few minutes, and then I do go and color the ear. You can see it's standing out all by itself. I don't know if it just blended into me and kind of matched the back of the collar going down towards the wings, so I just didn't pay any attention to that. But I was super hyper focused on the face, that little spot on the neck. I'm getting ready to hit again with water and lift everything off of it, and the hands. Now, the ear doesn't have a lot of color on it anyway, and again, perhaps that was it. But regardless, I'm about to realize it's like, oh yeah, I have it. So let me grab these colors here. And that is burnt carmine. I forgot to show that to the camera. That is burnt carmine right there. I'm starting with that. I already have my light colors down, and I'm going to go back like I did on the face and put the dark colors down, but I only need a couple of colors, just that burnt carmine and the pastel pink. And that's really all I needed on the ear. Just a little bit, just had a little bit of color. So, maybe she ignored it as well until the very end and went, oops, let me put a little color on that ear. But we're all colored up on that, and we're going to continue on. We have used the hair dryer, and I'm going to keep adding the color. And again, these are the lighter colors I'm putting on top just to kind of pull everything together. I'm going on top of all of my colors and just building it up, and just want to smooth all of that out. I don't want it to look rough. I want it to blend together. I have picked up the darkest color in these areas. That is that warm gray, and that's allowing me to get the shadows in there. Now, I really almost wish I had not activated these with color, but I wanted to make it true to what she does, which is watercolor. And I tossed around the idea of leaving some of these colors just as colored pencil and not changing them into watercolor, but I went ahead and did that. And you can see when I did, again, it lifted too much of the color. So I don't know if I have enough water on my brush. Maybe I have too much water. I'm not sure. But here we go. One more time. Let's just try this one more time down under the chin. And that's the color I want it right there. I want it to be that dark. I want it to show the shadow. There was quite a bit of shadow underneath there. It was quite dark. But we're going to come back and everything is gone. Guys, I don't know. I kind of failed you on that one. But I'm having to say it actually looks like it did before I added any of the color at the very beginning. It works better over on that little arm. You can see it lifts a little bit, but it's a little bit better. I don't know. Maybe I had too much of the lighter color underneath. I'm really not sure. If you know, let me know because I would love to hear your take on this. Adding the detail for the rest of the piece, and mainly it's the lower portion of the piece and the little wing back there. You know, it went much better than the face did as far as adding color down, and it stayed put and it was the color I wanted it to be. It was much more successful, but I don't know. Again, maybe I just had too much of that light color underneath and I had bared down too hard, so I had too much of a buildup. Not certain, but this all went much, much better. And these were a little bit tricky. It's kind of like the flower that's in the center right above the head that has little spots on it. What you have to do, get your color in, and then when you're coming back with these little spots, make sure your brush is clean, has clean water. You don't have any of the colors from the other things around it. And you're not going to have much water on your brush at all, just enough to activate the color. And do one little spot at a time, and then that's going to allow me to get spots in these areas. So I'm just going ahead and building up the color all the way around them. I'm not building everything up and doing the spots last. I'm adding it on where it is as if I were coloring it like a colored pencil piece, and then I'm just going to come back and activate all the areas around, and making certain that I don't have a lot of water on my brush to do the spots. Just a reminder from previous videos, when you're doing the wings for Cicely Mary Barker fairies, a lot of the wings you're not going to be able to actually sketch in all the spots and all the different color changes because you don't want all those pencil marks on the wings, especially if you're doing watercolor. So you're going to be freehand painting a lot of this, but it's really not that hard. As you can see, I do have a few ink lines in there. She had a few ink lines. I put those in and they work like a roadmap for doing the rest of it. So I love doing these little wings. As I'm activating the color here on the wings, you probably saw me pick up that warm gray 5. That warm gray I have found was wonderful in toning down the colors and creating some shade in the piece. I was using colors not only from the floral and not just the portrait, but also that landscape, and that warm gray 5 is not included in each one of those little sets. So I didn't get a chance to do a swatching sheet for every color and every set and mix it together, but I found it worked extremely well for toning down those colors and adding shade. Now, another method for using these pencils. I needed some concentrated area and I didn't want to dry this because this is still wet. So I just went ahead and picked up that pink pencil that I've used through this whole thing, got some water on my brush, ran it over the tip of the pencil and picked up a little color. And that worked great for finishing up this piece. So if you have made it through parts 1 through 4, kudos to you. Thank you so much for being here. And if you are new to the channel, thank you for being here. I'm glad you joined us, and I hope you will subscribe to the channel and follow along as I experiment and paint all sorts of things. As a matter of fact, I have an impressionism piece coming up with some caran d'Ache, so I hope you guys will check that out. But until then, my friends, I'll see you in the next one.